Well, hello, friends. My name is Chris Chase, and you are tuned in once again to another episode of the Today's Teens podcast, a limited edition series on the background of the Today's Teens conference, which is taking place February 22nd, Bramlea Baptist Church in Ontario, Canada. You can register for this event at todaysteens.ca. And here's the spiel I've been saying for the last couple of episodes. If you don't register for this event, I'm going to think that you're an enemy of mine. I'm going to take it personally. I will take this as you don't want to go because I'm going to be there. And so don't give me that anxiety. My life is troubled enough. I have enough things on my mind.
Chris,
please,
I know it's been hard for you. It's been hard for you to get out of bed these days. I know you're feeling it, and I feel for you right now. Listen, I am sitting here knowing the pain you're going through because people aren't hitting the registration button right now, and it's making me feel weight in my chest, bro. Like the weight. People, release the weight. Let Chris live. Give him life. Let's go.
They don't understand. You know the book, The Body Keeps a Score?
Yeah.
The Body Keeps a Score.
They don't know.
I'm losing 115 to nothing right now. The score is on my person.
Dude, so you sound like my Calgary Flames right now. I mean, just lose.
In the gutter.
Terrible. Oh, my word.
We need some trades. We need something to happen. So here's how you help. Register for this event, todaysteens.ca. And the voice you've just heard, the face you've just seen, man, we love to give flowers on this podcast. We love to talk to our friends, people who have been doing this thing we call youth ministry for a long period of time at a high clip, at a high level. And I don't know if there's many who have done it at such a high clip and high level as our guest today. He represents so many people across Canada, so many ministries across Canada. There's so many people who, 6 degrees of separation, the Kevin Bacon thing, the 6 degrees of separation that connect to our guest. Youth worker community guy, speaker, writer, podcast host himself at different times. He does everything. He does everything. Sid
my mom is going to be so thankful.
The building.
Dude,
Sid Koop is
I'm
in the building
sending this to my mom. I'm sending that to my mom. She's going to be so excited, dude. She's going to be like, oh, that's my boy. She's going to be so excited. So good. Oh, I love it.
Our viewership has gone up by one person, Sid Koop's mama. Let's go. We're out here.
Let's go.
Sid, it is so great to be able to spend time with you, to talk about your life, to talk about youth worker community, to talk about youth ministry, to talk about today's teens, and your impact as a youth worker, as a youth pastor, legitimately goes from C to shining sea, goes across the country. I've had the privilege of working alongside you for the last 2 years on the Today's Teens team. We were able to be together for a youth worker community event last March last year in Toronto, and just kind of see you in action in person as you and Jeremy, who we'll have on the show as well later on, and your team just really impacted with intentionality youth pastors in Ontario, something that you're doing this year across Canada as well. You're right now at a camp. Like, you don't can't stop, won't stop. You are right now in the midst of serving people and serving youth ministries right now. So I have to ask you this question before anything else. How are you doing?
I'm on with you, bro. I'm on with Chris Chase. Are you kidding me right now? My life is so good. I've been waiting for this moment.
Yes.
Like, this is kind of like, there's levels to this thing, Chris. And for me to be able to be in this space is absolutely incredible. And I am so thankful, you guys. I am so thankful. Yeah. So, Chris, this is great. I'm in the middle. I hesitate to say this because I'm at a different stage of life right now where, my boys have graduated from high school. My wife and I both roll in unique circles with our ministries in similar circles. So I get to move a little bit quicker maybe than I've done in the past. So I've just come off. This is a fun run. We just did a conference in Saskatoon last weekend, which was fantastic. As soon as the conference was over, I jumped on a plane, went to Alberta, got to do some teaching with Alberta youth pastors that are part of the Alliance Church. So that was awesome. And then when I finished there, I shot over to the Kaleo Leadership Development Program, Vancouver Island, with a number of student leaders that were in that space, which was just amazing. Finished that yesterday, and now I'm at the BC Camping Conference. Going to do a seminar today. Tomorrow, bro, we start our next YWC conference in Abbotsford. So excited. You guys, we got 700 youth workers in the room this weekend in Abbotsford. Are you kidding me? And then we're shifting gears, getting ready for today's teens. Let's go. So not to mention, I am currently in space with the one and only, the legend, Chris Chase. Let's go. Chris Chase, you're like the best dressed dude I know. Listen, Sid Koop from Elkhorn, Manitoba is in the house with Chris Chase. Come on. This is like, my days are getting like, I don't know. Where do I go from here? I think it's over. I'm shutting it down. It's finished. See you later. I'm out. It's good. We apexed.
Okay, listen. This is not this type of show. You don't get to turn the compliments on the host. That's not this type of show. That's not the type of show that we run here.
I love it.
You don't get to do that. You don't
Chris,
get to do that. There's no twisty here.
Chris, this is such a great season. This is such a great season and such a great stage of life I get to enjoy. I get to be with youth workers right across the country. And youth workers to me are just such a gift. It's such a privilege to be in space with youth workers. And there's a couple of reasons why it's such a privilege for me, Chris. So first of all, as a youth pastor, I love my volunteer youth workers I got to work with. I love the network of youth pastors I got to roll with. Like, that was a real gift to me, and it was pretty significant. And then my boys started going through youth ministries. And here's a funny story. So my oldest son gets into my youth group. First year, gets kicked out. Like, tough journey, dude. Like, tough journey. So one of our other youth pastors gives him a pause. But anyways, ends up in another youth group where a youth pastor just loves the heck out of him. Volunteer, small group leader, cares for him like crazy, changes his life. He's a youth pastor. Just started as a youth pastor now. And it's amazing to watch him work.
Very cool.
So for me, I have seen the effects of both paid youth pastors and youth workers, point leaders, who have created ministries that have facilitated just such an awesome space for my son to enter and experience the love of Jesus. And I've experienced volunteer youth workers who have come alongside my boys, and they have loved them, and they have prayed for them. They have given them a vision of a future that God might have for them, and they have changed their lives. So Chris, when I'm in this space, I just think, I look at these youth workers that I get to be with, that we get to be with, especially the volunteers, because I think our volunteers sometimes wonder, you know what I mean? Like, they have those nights when they're in that small group and they are wondering, does this actually matter? Because,
like, what am I doing?
I'm dying inside. You know what I mean? Like, we know what that's like. We know what it's like when you go to youth group and that kid walks in and you're like, man, if only the rapture could happen today, that would be the right thing. Like, that would be the right thing right now. And so we know, but and by the way, like my boy sometimes was that person. And yet there's so many people that you're right, correct? Yeah. There's so many people that I right now have in my like mental Rolodex, if you will, that I just go, they really changed my son's life. God used them to change my son's life in ways they have no idea. And they don't even know the moments that really mattered. So to be in this space, Chris, to be on this podcast right now, to be thinking about today's teens, like, this is holy ground to me. I think this is holy ground that we're treading on, and I'm just really thankful to be a part of it. It's a real privilege, honestly. Yeah.
When you think about youth pastors, volunteer youth workers, we all kind of start there. Yep. Like, the majority of us, we don't start in a paid position. The majority of us, we start volunteering, whether it's moving chairs, whether it's small groups, whether it's organization, whether it's worship, wherever it is, we start with volunteering and then we move there. Before we start talking about today's teens, I want to kind of pull back a little bit. Like, what was your first foray into youth ministry like? What was that like for you? And we'll be kind, 5 years ago, because you're a spry young man. So 5 years ago, when you first started in youth ministry, what was that like for you?
That's so good. Okay, so funny story, Chris. I grew up in a little town called Elkhorn, Manitoba, a town of 500 people. Dude, I lived in the country, 5 miles out. I remember in grade 9, we moved into town and I was so excited. This is a true story because I could ride my bike on pavement. So stoked. So anyways, my pops, who's is a lay pastor in a Mennonite church, partners with a dude who's a Pentecostal pastor, and they start the first church, evangelical church in our community in Elkhorn, Manitoba, to serve the community. I grew up going to church with 30 people, and there was one other person that was my age, and we didn't have a lot socially, that we connected on. So we didn't even have a youth group. That really wasn't the space, but we had these older people that loved us dearly, prayed for us, modeled what it was to have like real faith and be invested in the community. And then for me, my lifeline was camp. So I went to a little camp in southern Saskatchewan. And in that space, God used it to be like so transforming for me, because I saw again, like these people that were kind of one stage of life ahead of me, that I watched them live out a faith that showed me that God was so good and real. And they modeled for me authentic faith. They listened for me. They started to share a vision for my life. That was a game changer. And then, when I went to college, for the first time, someone said, "Hey, Sid, I think you should consider getting into like full-time youth ministry." And I was like, "Nah, I don't think so. I'm going to be a teacher." So I'm in university and I'm sitting in a classroom, and I remember the very moment when God said to me, "Okay, it's time to go. I need you to give your life to full-time youth ministry." And so it was a fascinating moment. I walked out of the class. I phoned my sister. I said, "Hey, I'm out. I got to head back to college, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I just know that God's called me and I got to roll." And so, dude, it's been a really unique space. To be honest with you, like I didn't really have a vision for what local church youth ministry looked like. I volunteered with Youth for Christ, which was super cool. In fact, my wife and I, when we were dating in university, we both worked for Youth for Christ. Here's a crazy story, you guys. You want to talk about like generational stuff. So she becomes a big sister for a young lady who's just having a real hard go. And her life was never easy, never easy. About 25 years later, we're at camp. My wife's the director of Green Bay Bible Camp. We get a call from her and she says, "Hey, my daughter's going through the same kind of journey that I went through and she needs someone like you."
Wow.
Sends her daughter to camp and her daughter gets baptized, bro, at camp. So that's like 25 years later, and that's because Youth for Christ work that was happening in Brandon, Manitoba, where we didn't know. Hey, here's what we were doing, by the way. Me and my friend Mark, who is Mark Anderson, who's a legend in Youth for Christ circles, were blowing up bombs for kids. Like we were blowing stuff up. And we'd bring in kids who'd been to camp and kids who were part of YFC. And we do an evening, we just blow stuff up. We're like, let's do youth ministry. So we were blowing stuff up. And then we're baptizing kids. That tracks. Right? That fits. So this is, hey, listen, youth workers, you want to baptize more kids in your ministry? Blow stuff up. Like this is how,
Blow things up.
Blowing it up. Yeah. So you know what? I just look back on that time and I go, these weren't professionals, a lot of them. They were just people who loved Jesus, felt called to be in presence with teenagers. And God used them to change my life. And man, it's interesting to talk about it, Chris. That's a long time ago, bro. Like you're kind, 5 years. Yeah. Okay. I'm over 50 now, brother. Like I'm almost, let's be honest, I'm going to heaven soon. So I'm excited about that. But the reality is I'm reflecting back and just going to see the goodness of God through the lives of just ordinary young men and women who just said, "Hey, I'm going to volunteer my time. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to volunteer my time." And it's made it's changed generations. Like, so you start connecting the dots to the fact that now I got a boy who's a youth pastor in a church doing the same thing with kids. I'm talking to him the other night where he's like recruiting volunteers, trying to figure out how to create space for them to properly disciple students and give them just one or two tools to equip them to do a little bit better. And I'm like, let's go. Let's go. So I go, "Hey, thank you, Kenosi Lake Bible Camp." Thank you, Alcorn Church.
Yeah, for
30
sure.
people, Chris, so when we're having this conversation right now, listen, we've got some volunteers listening to this stuff right now, and they're kind of wondering, man, so first of all, they're probably wondering if what they do actually matters. And then they're kind of feeling like, and part of it is they're going like, I'm not a professional. I don't have the tools, blah, blah, blah. And then they're going, today's teens, like, why would I do that? I have limited amount of time to give. I'm already kind of maxed out in terms of the amount of time I can give to this thing. Seriously, life is busy. And here's what I just want to say. The reason why I love an event like Today's Teens is because we've worked really hard to bring in some people that can help encourage and equip you to better disciple the kids God's placed in your care next week. And if we can just turn kind of the dial of your competency, if we can just give you one or two skills that could be helpful, and not only that, maybe even more so, if we can remind you, just give us a day, give us a minute to just remind you that what you do has way more eternal significance than maybe what you have an imagination for right now. And then maybe wait, just give me a minute. If I could just turn the dial for you and help you just enlarge your vision of who Jesus is and what he wants to do through you and
Amen.
what he's doing in lives through you, just give us a day. And if we can just help, facilitate, turn that dial, it can make a difference for the next, 6 months of the ministry that God's called you to. Or at least that's what our prayer is. Our prayer is that
Yeah.
we're going to encourage and equip you to better disciple the kids that God's placed in your care next week. And again, Chris, we feel like it is just such a privilege to host youth workers and just invest in them just for a little bit of time because of all the investment that they're putting into the next generation. So, bro, we, Matt, hey, Kay, so people don't know the story and it's okay. Matt's been running Today's Teens forever, and we've been able to come alongside and
Matt,
partner with him.
I'm going to stop you for 2 seconds.
The
Matt, for those of you
legend,
who don't know, that's Matt Wilkinson. That's
Matt
Matt
Wilkinson,
Wilkinson, who
the
is our
legend,
captain,
our
our
captain,
captain of today's
captain.
teams.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I've known Matt forever, and so
I
then
throw it back to you.
I love it. So Youth for Christ came and asked if we could kind of umbrella Today's Teens and come alongside. And we said, yeah, come alongside Matt, work with him. Are you kidding me? So when I say we, I just mean to say, hey, this is a conference Matt and all of his friends are doing. We get to come alongside, be a part of it, privilege again, and then to invite youth workers, point leaders, community workers, camp workers, volunteers into that space and be a part of doing this work. Yeah, this is time well spent for us. And it's a privilege to have people join us. Unbelievable privilege.
I love the line you said that they're able to do better for next week.
Mm-hmm.
Like there in youth ministry, there's both a short term and a long term. There's both a long term of vision and planning.
Yep.
When we were doing youth ministry, my wife and I, we used to look at it. We would look at a kid in grade 9 and say, "What do we want this student to look like when they're getting to grade 12?"
Yep.
And then there's also, okay, so Friday is coming. We have to plan something for Friday.
Yeah.
We have to have a little bit more inspiration for not just when that child is graduating and getting ready to go to university, but like the immediate issues that are happening in their lives right then and there. And
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned both the next week and the 6 months. That it's not just one or the other. Like youth ministry is a combination of both, and then other factors at the same time. I love that because that's my story. And fun fact here, just a relatability story. It was when I was in college. I was preparing to go into. My parents wanted me to go into medicine. I did not have the math skills for that, the math grades for that. So it was not going to happen. It was not going to happen. I need 2 cc's of, I don't know, just give it to me, right? It wasn't going to happen. And so it was going to be, like I was going to be in front of the board like all the time. Like I don't know, I can't count. So it's going to be teaching. And it was in my second year of college in Montreal where I was like, I sensed the Lord doing this in my life. And I remember having the conversation with my parents saying, I know we've paid for this, but I have to leave this area of my life to pursue what I believe is the future that God has for me. And at the time they were like, okay, and now they're like, well, you have no other discernible skills. Obviously, this was what you were supposed to do.
Right.
But at the time, they're like, oh yeah. You want to go into what now? Sorry, you're not allowed changing your life. But like so, like I can appreciate your story of saying there was a plan. There was something I was going to do, and even if people were pointing out to me there was something else that I was supposed to do, I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. And then at a certain point, the Lord sort of puts his hand on your shoulder and says, no, this is the way, walk in it.
Yeah, dude.
And so I love that. Like I can see myself in your story because I have a similar story to that as well.
Yeah, it's so good.
To that end, there are youth pastors, I would imagine, and you've seen them because you've literally just been traveling the last 6-8 weeks with different youth pastors, youth leaders, youth workers who might have had similar stories to what you and I have talked about, but who are right now in a season of, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of reasons why that could be.
Yeah. 100%.
There can just be disappointment of low numbers coming out of the pandemic. Even though we're 5 years out of that, it still hasn't bounced back to where it was before. Financially, cost of living has gone up across Canada, but salaries haven't necessarily reached that. There could be spiritual stuff that they're going through as they are, I don't want to use the bad word of deconstruction, but they're going through, like, I'm not sure what I believe in light of the world that I'm seeing in front of me and what I see in scripture. There's and there's a vast array of different reasons why they're sort of like, I'm ready to throw in the towel, or this is going to be my last year. I'm going to put my number up in the rafters. And they've forgotten that moment, whether they were teenagers, whether they were young adults, whether they were adults in a career, and God sort of put his hand on their shoulder and moved them towards himself. What would you say to those youth pastors who are like, this is way harder now than it was before? Like you talked about blowing things up. That's not as easy to do in
Oh, hey, don't
2025,
do that. Don't do that. Don't blow stuff
right?
up.
As it was, right?
Yeah.
Like, like, hey, listen, there was a time when
Hey,
Chubby
bro, and
Bunny
that was
was
in
the game.
hey,
You can't
that was
do
in
Chubby.
Brandon. That was in Brandon, Manitoba. Listen, no, nobody was aware. We were just blowing stuff up. Don't do that anymore. Just that plan and protect. That's don't get that
There's
as tradition.
somebody
I know.
there's somebody who has satellite pictures of that going, like, and they're concerned about that. But that's another story. Like, what would you say to that youth pastor who has felt
Yeah.
like, I'm at my wits. Youth ministry is not fun anymore. I don't feel like I'm cut out for this anymore. The generations have passed me by. What would you say, especially to that volunteer youth pastor who is like, what am I doing? Like, I could just be going back to my job. Like,
Yeah.
what am I even doing here? What would you say to that youth pastor who's had that moment like you did in college and is right now questioning that moment and thinking about stepping away?
Yeah. So first of all, Chris, I want to be really careful. There's going to be a lot of people that are in similar in an emotional moment like what you've just spoken of,
Mhm.
but there's so many different experiences that have placed them there. So I just want to acknowledge that before I answer, because
Sure,
both you
of
and I,
course.
if we were in a conversation with that person, we'd be asking a lot more questions in terms of the right types of response. But there's some emotional distance here, so I can toss a couple of things out. If I was with that person, there's a few things that I would say. I would say, first of all, um, Jesus is more present than you know, and he loves you more than you
Mm,
could ever imagine. And his love for you has not changed in any way, shape, or form, even as kind of your emotional heat has, shifted and changed and come and gone. He's still present. He's still there. He loves you so much. One of the things that I would be praying for first and foremost is that they could experience the renewal of the Holy Spirit in their life, and that would be taking place in a really powerful way. And if I was with my volunteer youth worker and they came to me and they just said, Sid, I think I'm finished. I just don't have it anymore. I would say, I hear you. I am praying for you. Let's create some space for you where you can ask the Lord to renew your spirit. And he can. He's so faithful. That would be one element, one part of a conversation I have. Another part of a conversation I would have is without placing shame or guilt, I would just say, hey, I know you might not see it, but what you do matters more than you could imagine. And there's not a single thing that Jesus can't redeem and that he's not using. And he is working powerfully through you,
mm,
even if you're not aware of it. And one of the interesting, things that I realized in my life is seasons when I was struggling, and even the two times when I moved away from the church I moved away from. I had no idea what an impact Jesus was making through me until I left and people, responded to the leaving. And I would say to the youth, one thing I'd love to say to a youth worker is say, like, again, your presence, your consistent presence matters more than you know in the life of that young person. Whether that feedback loop is clear or not, just know that in the life of a youth person, you consistently showing up matters. I'll never forget when a friend of mine came to me and he just said, "Hey, Sid, faithfulness is a weapon. So don't quit on faithfulness, bro." So that matters more. There would be an appropriate moment, Chris, when I would want to say, "Hey, let's not be surprised that this is hard." Because it really is. And there is there's all sorts of good and bad reasons for suffering and hardship and challenge and difficulty. But on this side of eternity, to be honest with you, we have been told that there will be trials of many kind that we will have to roll through. And what I would want to say is I would want to say, hey, there might be space where you need to take a break. There's a space where we need to move to health. There's lots of things to evaluate. But the work you're involved in is so important that it's worth the cost. Like if you know when it
Yeah.
that there is an element of this that is worth the cost, and that we shouldn't be shocked by that, but know that Jesus, that the resources of the Holy Spirit in your life can carry you through, and He has promised to carry you through, and He will continue to renew you. So there's an element of that conversation that would happen. And then there's another side of it, especially for point leaders, where I would simply say this. I would say, and it's interesting. I was in a really dark season for a long time, actually, like a year and a half. And I had to come to a place where I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust that in this dark season, you're doing a pruning work. So I'm going to entrust myself to you and not try to escape it. And I'm going to just sit in this. And when you are ready to release me, I'm going to trust you. But I had to write on my board, I said, I'm going to resolve to remain in leadership as long as God calls me to do so. And there's lots of reasons why the Lord might ask you to leave leadership. There's many, but He might not be asking you to leave leadership, and the need is really high. And so, for those of us who are organizational leaders in our ministries, there's a unique weight that goes with that for sure. And I just want to say to you, Jesus can carry that weight for you. And if He's released you, hey, you need to follow His calling and go where you go. But the need to stay in it for the sake of the body of Christ and the kids that God's placed in your care, for the sake of the volunteers you lead and the kids that God's placed in your care, just take that into account in terms of God's calling for your life in that space. And again, He might call you on. That's okay. But He might not, and it's worthy work that we're being asked to do. So, those are a few of the thoughts that are just rolling through my head when I think, and again, each applies differently to different people in different spaces. I think the big one for volunteers, when I think of volunteers, is we tend to evaluate our success or failure based on one evening or like one moment or one experience. And the impact of a youth worker is measured over weeks, months, and years, to be honest with you. And again, when we can consistently show up in the life of a young person, especially this journey of adolescence is such a time of transition, change, and all the different pieces that go along with it. When we can be with them in that journey, both on the mountaintops and valleys, that consistent presence over time is powerfully shaping in the life of a young person. We just don't have the immediate feedback loop that we'd love to have to get that dopamine hit that keeps us coming back for more.
Right,
Like
for sure. Yeah.
this isn't Instagram we're playing here. This is long haul work that we're involved in.
That line, oh man, we try to evaluate it on one night.
Yeah.
Right. And how many times as a young youth pastor, it's like you don't realize until you're in it that like some of those things are not sustainable. Like that big outreach is not sustainable for like 19 weeks in a row. Right. And so you can't evaluate whether that place is packed or there's nobody in there. The trajectory of your youth ministry really is the long haul. And just the other day, my son and I were at a store and we bumped into this person is now a full on adult.
Yeah.
But immediately I say hello to them. They remember, and then we start telling stories of when they were a teenager.
Wow.
And I'm walking out with my son, and I'm telling him, like, if you do it right, when you reconnect with somebody from that time in their lives, they don't try to avoid you. They don't try to ignore you. Immediately you go into stories, and immediately they start even telling you about like I'm not going to church like I should, and you're like, I didn't even ask you about that. I was just asking if you have a size 5, right? Like that sort of thing. Like I wasn't asking you about your right. Like immediately, like okay, well we can okay, my son, like right, like that sort of thing. But like because you've done it the right way, because you were in their lives for the long haul, and you weren't just there to do an event. You weren't just there to save them from boredom or to give them something to do on a Wednesday or a Friday or a Sunday. You were there to be in their lives. That the idea of the long haul and being in their lives is so vital. And I know that volunteer youth pastors and
Ooh,
professional youth pastors will appreciate what you just said, because there's something to be reminded that of that. Like I'm going to resolve to remain. I'm going to
man,
resolve to
result.
remain,
Yeah,
and the
I
resources of the
know.
Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah,
Like we forget that because we are so.
yeah,
And I know you'll understand this. We lean so heavily on the conferences that we forget
yep,
primarily we need people of the Spirit who allow the Spirit to
yep,
empower us, so
yep.
that conference or not, we're able to continue on. That being said, come to the Today's Teens Conference, February 22nd,
Get there,
2025 at
baby.
Bramley Baptist
Let's
Church.
go.
Get there.
Let's go.
Get there as a resource. As a
Hey,
resource.
as a
Right? Like, don't,
resource,
right?
Chris, you've heard this before lots. We way overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, way underestimate what we can do in like 3 to 5. And that's not just for point leaders, that's for volunteers too. Like when a volunteer with good character can show up in a kid's life, for 3 to 5 years as they move through adolescence, like the role you play informing and shaping the future of that young person through that time is significantly greater than you can imagine. Hey, next to a parent, I mean, parents are the most significant shaper in the life of a young person, for sure. Like that's God's good design. That's what God's at work doing.
Yeah.
Next to a parent, a volunteer youth worker may be best positioned to ally with parents to support and help shape that work in the life of young. Think about this for a second, Chris. In what institution or organization do we have that kids access where they have adults who are equipped and who have a program designed to relate to students in the
Mm-mm.
way that a volunteer youth worker does in a church or a youth for Christ environment or a camp setting, where there's like where like in a healthy space, your whole goal is for the health, growth, and development of that young person. Like that's it. Like I'm not a
Yeah.
coach where I need something from you. I'm not a coach where you have to earn my attention or my affirmation. You know what I mean? Like I just don't know any space to the same degree where kids can experience this type of mentorship with this level of intentionality. So again, when I think about like again, we're camping on our volunteers right now. We should, because they are the most important part of a healthy youth ministry, near as I can tell. Like you just play such a unique role in the life of a young person. And bro, I heard about this event called Today's Teens, where they talk about that a lot.
Mm.
And they're just like, hey, we just need you to
Yeah.
know what you do really matters. And we're going to remind you of that over and over and over again. And then because we love it, you so much, we brought in all these amazing speakers and people to help encourage and equip you to better disciple kids. And we got this legend named Matt Wilkinson who's like, woo, got vision for this thing. And then they brought in this dude named Chase, coolest guy I've ever met in my life. Dude got threads and he
I
just is
told you.
awesome. And then you show up and you're like, I'm in
That's
the
strike
presence of
two.
greatness. Let's go. And then they bring along old guy over here because we got to be intergenerational. So let's bring the old guy back in the house again so he can hang out just for a hot minute. Let's go. Everyone's like, dude, watch out. That guy's going to have a heart attack. Woo. We're praying that I just make it through alive. That's what we're talking about right now. I'm putting earplugs in. Hey, you're still in it. I got earplugs in when I'm in the main sessions. Let's go. Actually, no longer. It's no longer earplugs. Now I got to get the new AirPods so that because they're like hearing aids, so I can like hear something. It's like everyone thinks I'm cool with
The
my
noise
AirPods. No,
canceling.
they're
There you
just
go.
my hearing aids. That's all. That's all. Help me hear you, bro. Let's go.
You're ridiculous. That's strike two. I told you, you're not allowed turning this show on me. You're not allowed doing that. Couple quick questions for you before you send you back
Yeah.
out to do camp stuff and report to youth pastors and youth workers. You mentioned the team. You mentioned we have an incredible slot of main session
So
speakers.
good.
We have Cheryl, we have Ken, we have Hakeem, we have Caitlin, we
Oh,
have a vast array. I think it's like
dude,
40 or so
people from
session
like just
speakers.
stupid, like they're all from stupid different spaces, bro. Like my guy Hakeem. Have you met
Just
Hakeem?
covered.
Hakeem is my guy.
I have not.
Oh, dude, he shows up and I become in just cooler by being with him. Like he is so good. And the dude is
That's
crazy
cool.
smart. He's crazy smart. And then wait, I gotta tell you one thing. This is so cool. This is why how cool this guy is. Because sometimes we wonder if the
Go for it.
people we throw on our stage if they're like, if they really are who they are. So I'm talking to my boy the other day, right? My son, he's
That's fair.
like,
Yeah.
right? And also he's like, yeah, Dad, I called up Hakeem and Hakeem told me this, this, and this. I'm like, Hakeem told you that. First of all, I've been telling him that for like 10 years. He's not listening to me. But what had happened is he'd met Hakeem. He starts
That's
calling him.
dad life though. They never
That's
listen to
dad life.
dad.
It's real. It's real. So volunteer, like youth workers, they listen to you, not me, which is why I talk to you so you'll have something to say to them. Anyways, point is, I find out Hakeem is like calling PK like on the bi-weekly. He's become like his personal theologian. So I just need you to know, youth workers,
Cool.
you get to show up. These people want to meet with you. They want to hear your stories. They want to speak into your lives on the weekend. It's really awesome. Please come join us. You know what I used to say to my youth workers? I used to say, hey, listen, could you trust me on just one time? Trust me one time. I know it's a big ask. Show up. And if this weekend doesn't help you better disciple your kids next week, I'm not going to ask you to come again. And so we take your
Mm.
time really seriously. Matt takes your time really seriously. And we've done all we can to create a space that we think can help you in some of the most important work that you're involved in. So we love it. Pretty stoked.
Yeah. When we get together, it's once it's we start meeting in September. Both of us, we sit on the lead
Dude.
team. Our producer Misha Watson as well, and others who've been on the podcast. We get together and we sit down and we go through precept upon precept, line
Oh.
upon line item. Like we walk through like every element
Minute by
of this event,
minute, bro. Minute by minute.
like everything. Like we're walking through the entire thing. What are some and I asked and I'll add this too. And then when we get to the event, it's been described. Melinda described it this way: it's like a family reunion. We don't
Yeah,
get
it
to
is.
see each other because we're across the country. We don't get to actually be in the same space as one another, and so it's a great
Yeah,
sort of like catch up, right? Beyond Instagram, beyond socials, just like
yeah.
how are you? What are some of the values for you? You who travels, you who are at this stage of life. You mentioned that earlier. Your boys are
Mhm.
out of high school, and so the need for you to be around is different in their lives than it would have been when they were younger. So you're able to be out a bit more, just based on life experience. What is it like for you at this stage of your life in this area of leadership and ministry to also need community as well, to also need to be poured into
Yeah,
as well, and to have life
yeah,
spoken into you from other people, whether it's online and
yeah,
laughing at my jokes in one of our meetings, or whether it's hanging out at today's team, just with the catch-all of youth pastors, youth workers, and the team as well.
yeah. Hey, listen, I need to go into a space where I'm reminded that I'm not alone in what I'm doing. I need to be in a space where being with people who are as or more invested in this work than I am reminds me that what I do really matters. Like it's actually important. And I'm not
Mhm.
crazy. Well, I am crazy. We all are a little crazy for what we're doing. Let's just be clear on that.
We have a little bit
But
of craziness, yeah.
I'm just a little crazy. We all do. Yeah. Otherwise, we don't do this. There has to be a little bit of that. But to just be reminded that I'm not alone, that there's a much bigger community that's at work that I get to be a part of. So that's really important to me. Number two, to be in a space to remind me that what I'm doing is eternally significant, to be reminded that God has a plan, a unique plan for this moment that He's inviting us into in a work that He wants to do with the next generation. And so there's something eternally significant that's taking place. And then to be in a space, here's what I really love so much, to be in a space with people who have taken the craft of youth ministry very seriously, and that there's actually a way for me to continue to get better at it. Like it's actually something that I can develop some skills that can help me through really complex spaces. So the work we do, youth workers, point leaders, and volunteers, is very complex. I think it's some of the most complex works that happens within the church and local communities and camps is working with youth. And so to be in a space that helps me with tools and resources that can work through the complexity so I can walk away feeling like, okay, I think I have a next step on this situation or this issue that just felt way too big for me. All those things are so important for me, Chris, personally, when I walk into that space, and I'm so thankful to be able to be in it.
Yeah, I love our ability to be reminded that we are learning in real time.
Yeah,
Like there's
exactly.
never a moment where we have solved the issue that is
No.
youth ministry. As every generation changes, as they get older, As the world changes, we have to be more equipped. And that requires a little bit of humility on each of us to say,
Oh, yeah,
we don't
excellent.
know everything, right? We all know a piece of the puzzle. And what I find that age experience does is it allows us to have a better sense of like, I need to be learning more. I am moving into my mid 40s.
Let's go.
And I
Bro,
need to
that's
have a
a
better
good looking
understanding.
mid 40. That's a good looking mid 40. Let's go, baby. Come on.
We outside. And so
I
I
see
have
that
to
light.
realize that it's right here. It's all here.
There's no just for
I
men
have to
showing
realize that
up.
like
You're letting it happen. You're just coming clear. I like it.
why fight it? Why fight it? So we're running long, but it's fine. This is a story.
Let's
We're
go.
at the mall, same mall that I'm at with my son. We're just looking at running shoes. And I mentioned to one of the people who are working at the store, we give no free promo on the show. Said we give unless you're a sponsor, we're not going to talk about your company.
I
So
like it.
I was at a store looking at running shoes, and I mentioned to the server, I remember when this shoe came out the first time, and my son from behind me goes, "Dang!" And I go, "Excuse me?" And then the server goes, "Oh, you're Unk now," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
Let's go. Come
oh
on.
my gosh." I say that to say, as I'm getting older, the disconnect becomes further and further and further from the generation that I'm hoping to serve. And so, an event like this,
Yes.
with humility, allows me to
Yes.
not put on airs and not try to be something that I'm not, but to be able to better understand and then communicate to the young people who are around me and
Yeah.
serve to the best of my abilities. And I thank you that you have been on the forefront of allowing us to age in ministry gracefully, to learn
Mm.
gracefully, to learn in humility, to learn in an environment where we are able to laugh and cry and struggle and pull and push, but come out better for it. We, as a community of youth pastors and youth leaders and youth workers, we are better
Yeah.
because of your input in it, Sid. You need to hear that. We are better because of your impact
Mm.
in and around us. We are, I don't know if you hear this enough, but we're grateful for
Mm.
your impact. We're grateful for what you have impacted into. I'm grateful for the last 2.5 years where I've gotten to get to know you. I'm getting on because I feel better
Mm.
knowing that I know you. And not
Mm.
from a popularity space, but just from I have somebody in my corner who believes in me.
Mm.
Huh. Praise God. And I know that
Mm.
that is true for multiple youth pastors and youth workers across Canada. And so,
Mm.
dude, thank you so much for making time
Man,
to be with us today.
thanks, brother.
We
Appreciate
we
you.
we appreciate you. We appreciate the fact that you're on this team leading with us. It's so fantastic.
Appreciate you. Chris, too kind. Thanks so much, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for your work, you guys. And this is worthy stuff. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Friends, friends, this has been another episode of the Today's Teens podcast. Reminder to you to register for this event at todaysteens.ca. It is February 22nd, 2025. It is going to be a great time. Keynote speakers, seminar speakers, the ability to go and hang out and spend time with each other and with them is going to be great. Make sure to be there. And again, if you don't go, I'm going to take it as a personal affront. That's just what it is. I'm going to say like you're not going because of me.
He's a mess. Clean it up. Let's go, people. Clean it up.
Come on. For the sake of my friends, for the sake of my family, just come to this conference. It'd be great. For myself, for our producer, Misha Watson, thank you so much for another opportunity for us to speak into your lives. We look forward to hanging out with you again soon. Have a good one.